Welcome, everyone. Thank you to Andy for putting this design night on. Thanks to LinkedIn for hosting us. Our goal here is to give you a super simple design system that you can start using in a few hours. And then to give you some tips and tricks for scaling it up when your team grows from maybe one to many and you have lots of developers, lots of designers. I think of this as a Betty Crocker cake mix for design systems. It's easy to do and turns out great. And there's some bigger design systems that you can use as well. They're a little bit harder to do. Cool. About me, I'm Tricia Spoonts. I am the lead designer at Rimento. I used to be the head of UX design at Mavenlink, where I worked with Rob. We built our first design system there together. I've worked on teams of one, up to teams of 50 plus designers. I've built many, many design systems. I am the child of two accountants, which has instilled in me a love of systems and patterns. So if there's a pattern to find, I will find it. And I'm on the social media. If you want to follow me, the most interesting place is my Instagram, crazy name, I know. You might even see the crocheted giant animals on there. Cool. Rob?
And I'm Rob Levin, and I'm a senior UI UX developer and illustrator at Mavenlink. And I also do some freelance illustration. I did the illustrations here. And if you want to come talk to me after the show, I'm friendly, I don't bite. Or come find me on social, probably Instagram I'm most active on. At Rob Levin Illustration. And with that, pass it back to Tricia.
Great. Cool. So let's start with a very brief history of design systems. In the beginning, there were UI kits. So UI kits were really static documents that we maybe built once, handed off. Designers may reference them, they may not. But typically, in these days, you had no place that you collated the actual components that were in your design system. We're building web applications, so you want the digital code to reflect your actual design. Then we started, so let me back up. If we think of UI kits, if you think of high school, this is like, you've got the nerds at one table, you've got the art geeks at another table, and we're passing notes across the table. Nobody's talking to each other. We start building pattern and component libraries. This is good because suddenly we're able to see all the components in our system and how they match up to design. So now we're all kind of in our high school sitting together at the same table, but we're kind of doing our own thing. We might be looking at our phones. We're probably not talking to each other as much as we could. What we want to get to is a synchronized workflow. So what this means is dev informs design, design informs dev. So it's not handoff, design's not just like, here, build this exactly the way I say. It's a back and forth process where our code is informing our design, our design's informing our code. And there's a couple ways to do this. You could design in code, that's a way to do it. You can bring code into your design, so something like React SketchUp. I recommend a third way, which is to build. So when you're designing a design system, you're designing the elements, but you also want to design the way you work with each other. So you're also designing the process. So pay as much attention to that as you do to every element and every pixel that you put on the page, and you'll find yourself far more successful. Cool. So let's talk about you. Who's this talk for? This talk's for a team of one. And bigger teams trying to get their act together. And I have this definition of getting your act together, which I think is funny that somebody defined it. From the Cambridge Dictionary, it says, to start to organize yourself so you do things in an effective way. So what design systems will do is keep you organized, and organization helps communication. They'll help keep you consistent. Consistency is good for your team, because you're not building things over and over again. And consistency is good for your users because they can understand what to expect. And then you eliminate guesswork. When I started at Mavenlink, we had this famous document of like 67 shades of gray in use in the application. And once we built the system, I think we got it down to about 8. Cool. So I'm a team of 1. Do I really need a design system? How many of you are a team of 1? Great. Yes. Why do you need a design system as a team of 1? You're only one person, so things are going to get crazy. If things haven't gotten crazy, they will. And if you put the effort forth in the beginning, your future self will thank your current self. And so you want to put this design system out there while it's small, and then as you grow, it's much, much easier than starting from a big, crazy thing. Cool. So let's talk about the system. The system's super easy. Brad Frost's Atomic Design is probably the most well-known system. It's not unlike Atomic Design, but just has 2 elements. I have items. Items are the smallest things you can break things down into. So you can't break it down anymore in any useful way. And then components, which are combinations of items. Cool. So I've put together this Acme library. It's on my GitHub. I'll tweet it out tonight after the talk. And the Acme library is a reference library you can use to see the stuff I'm talking about if you'd rather play with it. So what we start with here are the foundational items. So usually color, type, icons, images. These are the places that we always start, I think. And this is the place where you can differentiate your system. So if you're building a design system for a kids app, that's going to be very different than a design system for an investment bank. So you start here, and then things get really interesting, and you start to build components. And so I'm assuming that you're not starting from 0, that most people here have built some part of some design somewhere. There's some mock somewhere. And so what I like to do is take a look at that and start circling stuff that's common. So we have this 2 guests. We have this kitchen. It's an icon plus text on Airbnb. Those are the same thing. We might have a couple headings here, some links, and this big, booking form component. What I suggest you do is outline all these things and only build these things. Don't build anything more. Don't build anything else. Build those when you need them. And the reason why is things change, and you're just always keeping this stuff up to date. So if you know it exists, don't do any more than that. All right. So here in the Acme system, it's a publishing company. We're going to build some wine reviews. Here's our first component. First, we'll use an H5. That's from our typography. An image, a 1x1 square here, and then an icon and some colored text. Now we can use this in 2 really interesting ways. A location component, or I want to do a little review of this Brut Rosé. So these are 2 exact same thing. I'm just eliminating the image and changing some colors on these. All right, so now we're really cooking. We've got all of these base components, plus all these base foundational items, plus our components. And what I like to do then is create a sketch template. You can do this in any kind of system. Most of us use Sketch these days. I just throw a palette of all my components on there, so I can just drag and drop and compose a page. All right, so hopefully I can play this video. All right, so here I'm composing a page very quickly. This took me about 2.5 minutes to do. A couple notes. I store my text as symbols so that I can just overwrite it, and then I'm using an 8-point soft grid just for my layout. I don't include layout specifically in the system. If I can agree with my developers on how far away we're setting things, then it's like, this is 8, this is 16, this is 24. Material design does the same thing. So we're building out this page, and you'll see our component that we were developing earlier, and I will fill in the various parts. Website, then I can change the color of the text here using a little sketch trick. On the GitHub site, I explained how to do that. All right, drop some text in here. Great. Cool. Now, We have this nice review of Gustafson Family Vineyard. And for a really small team, all I do is mark up the design with the components from the design system. These could be in Sketch, these could be in a style guide. We've got a navigation bar, the image, the typography, and then this new thing we just created called the titled group. And what I would do is just pair with the developer to figure out how this is going to look in code. And then the next time I reference it, I just call it the titled group. And if I'm a little bit off by a few pixels, it doesn't matter. Use the titled group. I'm not telling you to build anything new. All right. So this, at Mavenlink, is where I'd hand it off to Rob. And here's where I'll do the handoff to Rob. Let's talk about the dev side.
All right. Thanks, Tricia. You guys excited? We have a design system now, right? Sketch file, template, go download it, get your product started. Okay, so we have a design system now, but the rest of the teams, the rest of the departments don't yet know what's going on. So what we need to do is publish this design system, and we have a lot of tools these days available to do that. Sketch Measure, Envision's got a product, and Zeppelin is what we use. I think I'm a little loud. I will go a little softer here. Zeppelin is what we use at Mavenlink. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to publish your site to a web page. So this is our colors. And this is one design asset that's been published and pushed out as an HTML page. And you can see the CSS and the colors, and everything is fine and dandy, and it's a beautiful thing. You also are going to need a developer site. Probably while you're creating your initial design system in the step Tricia was talking about, your developers are off hard building the developer style guide. And that's the pattern, library, web-based style guide that we've been seeing for the last 5 years. So we use React at Mavenlink. So we use React Style Guide as for our style guide, but you might use something different. There's a lot of choices out there. If you have sort of a vanilla HTML, JavaScript, CSS type of app, you could use Brad Frost's Style Guide and just replace the templates with your own components. You could also use tdcss.js. I'm a core contributor to that, and that's actually the legacy design system that Tricia and I built a couple years back. The tooling really doesn't matter. Use whatever works for you. What you're going for is a synchronized workflow. So now we have the design site and we have the developer site, but we haven't really achieved synchronized workflow because a developer's going to go to the developer site, they're going to look at the button and they're going to be like, is the border radius really 3 pixels? Let me verify that. So what you want to do is cross-link back to the design system. And how we do that, this is our developer site. If you look in the upper left over there, we have a little link, design spec. If you click on that link from the developer site, you're going to be brought back to that Zeppelin site. Pretty simple. You click on the button and you see, yep, border radius is 3 pixels. So it's really useful for the developer to be able to see the designer's intent, because that's really what should be driving the design and what's actually implemented, right? So now you've got this holy grail of developer site, design site, they're linked, things are good. How do you scale the team? How do you get people to use this thing? Well, a couple conventions are helpful. One is versioning. So here's version 1 of our notification system at Mavenlink. If you go into the code, this is what you're going to see. This is what's available and implemented. This is version 2. I think it looks a little nicer, and it's sort of like the aspirational direction we want to go. And this is useful to have because if dev makes tweaks on version 1, he or she might be able to foresee what they need to do in code so that they don't screw themselves and pigeonhole themselves into a corner. Also, you can have meetings about this and all that kind of stuff. But this one is the one that's in our style guide today and available. And it's useful to have those synced up, and you can see if there's any discrepancies and go and tackle those. The other convention I recommend is no-brainer, use naming conventions. If you have, say, a button primary on your design site, call it button-primary in your CSS. Make it easy on yourself. The other thing you need to do is really drive this home with your culture. You need to get out there and advocate for it. Brad Frost, who I'm sure you guys have all heard of, says you can create the best style guide in the world, but if you don't actively promote it and communicate changes, the entire effort will suffer greatly. So some things you can do there. Create an attractive email template and send out newsletter updates with what you've accomplished, what's on the horizon. And you can even also do change logs. Material design bakes it right into their style guide. And you also want to let the other team members cross-departmentally know how to contribute to the style guide. Eventually, you want collective ownership. And a couple of other things you can use this for is for onboarding. So you have a junior member, they just came on the team, they want to ramp up and start contributing. Well, with a really effective design system, they can start contributing right away. You want to hold weekly forums or some sort of meetings where people can, lodge complaints and make requests and say what they want to see. And you want to offer some pairing support. If you want people to adopt your new style guide, offer to pair in with them. And lastly, do some educational outreach, some lunch and learns, whatever you do at your organization. And with that, you'll be in nerd bliss.
All right.
You'll be synchronized and it feels so good.
Time for just like 2 questions. Anybody have questions?
Any questions?
No? Too easy.
Oh, here we got you over there.
What form do they take? Are they in person? Are they how do you organize?
That's a great question. So the question was the weekly forums, what sort of format do those take? Those would be in-person meetings, and you want to have somebody capture notes, and you can actually use that to funnel it into your email newsletter, and that's something that we do. So, Chris said this, and Sarah said that, and this is what we're going to do about it, and put that in your newsletter.
When is the ideal time to build your first design system?
As soon as possible. As soon as you think you have something that can be a system, I typically wait till you know you have product market fit. So if you're very new in a startup and you're not sure you have product market fit, that thing might change radically. Once you know you have that, then you're in a pretty good state. And I would build a design system, if only to keep yourself organized and to be able to build things really, really quickly and talk to the rest of the people in the organization. If you can build the components very early, then you're building this really clean, nice, compact thing that you can work with. One more? One more question, I think we're good. We had one more hand up, so we can be quick.
Hi, our organization is actually working on a design system right now, but they're taking a lot of time and it's pretty slow. And as a result, designers can't really wait for that, and they go about doing the designs because work doesn't stop. So how would you go about solving that is my question.
What's the timeline?
Yes.
Right. I don't know if the solution to that, tell them to go faster, but one thing that occurs to me in that slide, we're talking about versioning. If design is accelerating ahead, make sure that you have versions. And do you have a cross-linked dev site and design site, even at MVP yet?
Yeah, we do. It's just that I feel like the concept of design systems is still pretty in the nascent stages right now. So we're working on it, but it's just that we do have a lot of components out there that aren't linked
Right.
to
Yeah, I would tell you to commit to one. Say, okay, by the end of this week, we will have one component and we're going to use that one and see how that goes. And then build, it's like anything that we do, just build on that. If you can get one thing done, it just builds momentum towards the next thing and the next thing.
I'm staying the rest of the night, so if anybody has any other questions, come talk to us. We don't bite.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks all.